And that squeal means we're live. Welcome, everyone.
Wow, that was impressive.
So thanks. So Jeff Cross made me a little like that, the jingle there, the audio. That was like, this is awesome. So I made the little video clip. I've been working on my my video editing skills as much as I can here. So
that's really funny.
Nice. I'm glad you like it. So yeah, Sam, amazing to have you on. This is ZLS 044. Couldn't think of a better guest for this episode. You rock, man.
Oh man, thanks. So this is your 44th episode? Is that what you're saying?
44th episode. It goes up pretty fast when you go it every day.
Yeah, that's like seriously impressive.
Hey, thanks, man. Well, even more impressive, I think, than my live stream is your DevRel book.
Oh, well, thank you.
The nice transition there.
Yeah, that was a very smooth segue there.
Thanks, man. Here, I'm going to post the link in the comments here. So, Sam, I think you came out with this last week, your new DevRel book that's available as an ebook. I think you're keeping the price at $9, which
yeah.
Awesome
So
of you.
Yeah, my original plan was to do just like a special launch price of $9 and then raise it after or like starting today, like after, because it was 1 week ago. But the response I've gotten has been like so good, and it's like cheap enough to where people like it's affordable. People are buying it at like multiple copies for giveaways for like people that don't have access to that information. And so like I was talking to actually to Chris Evaleja, who's a good pal of mine, and we were just sort of brainstorming. It was like, you know what, I'm just gonna leave it at $9. I'm probably gonna do like a revised and expanded version of it later, and maybe have a different, like a second edition for maybe $20 or $30 or something later. But for this version, this like 70-page version, I'm just gonna leave it at $9 and like spread it far and wide.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
I read the first chapter. I think you put out the first chapter for free, but I think I'm definitely going to buy this. So I haven't yet, but we'll add one more to your numbers at least. And everyone else who's watching, make sure you buy it because it's great.
Yeah, thanks.
So while you're here too, some really cool stuff coming out of Auth0 too, right?
Yes.
Do you want to share about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we had two really big releases in the last like week or two. One is called the Auth0 Marketplace, and this is sort of like GitHub Actions for your auth flow. So if you're doing, let's say you wanted to integrate with Twilio to send a text message when somebody logs in or something like that, instead of having to like do a bunch of configurations, you literally just like click the add integration button. Like if you go to SMS providers there on the left, SMS, and then you could like click Twilio and just like integrate it, just add integration, and it has you like put in some, it has like a guide. I mean, yeah, it's gonna, don't worry about doing it now, but yeah, if you click on that installation tab there's like a whole bunch of documentation on how to do it. It's like legitimately really nice. Like I know it's my job to talk about it, but it actually is like they did a really good job, because
just seeing how many y'all have already on the marketplace is really impressive for just launching this. So that's really cool.
It works for like social connections. The big like win is going to be that for enterprise people who do a lot of like single sign-on integrations, it's going to make it like really simplifies that. But even if you're not doing enterprise stuff, it's actually like a really cool feature. I'm really excited about it. Especially like in DevRel, because we do so much collaboration with other companies, we're going to be able to have them like do, write integrations for this, like Terraform or Hasura or, companies like that. And then they can just like integrate in. So that's the marketplace. The other really big win for for everybody this week was the new Angular SDK. This is a really so the SDK team has been just like busting out a lot of stuff. They came out with a new React SDK a couple of months ago. And this one's the Angular one. And the idea here is that it's a wrapper around the Auth0 SDK that just like simplifies everything. Like we provide the auth service, we provide the HTTP interceptor, the guard for protected routes. Like
nice.
It's just all in there for you. I actually wrote the guard. That's my contribution to this SDK. I actually finally, once again, have production code in the world. But yeah, super I can't. Cool. I mean, yeah, I did like 1% compared to everybody else, but it's actually really nice. Like when we've sort of had a long journey with integrating with Angular because Angular is like so idiomatic compared to other frameworks, and so like when we first came out with the new like Auth0 SPA SDK last year, all of our examples were we're using async await and like because the SDK is promise based, and so that got a lot of feedback from the community that like nobody in Angular uses async await, which I know is true. I mean I consider myself an Angular developer. But so then we went to the other extreme. We brought in a couple of big heavy hitters in RxJS to help us write a more like observable, friendly auth service. And it was really elegant and nice. But the problem was that for like most of the average Angular developers, it was inscrutable. Like it was just like concat maps and like a lot of like really complicated observable stuff.
Yeah.
And so even though it was really nice and elegant, the problem was that people were unable to debug it. Like if something went wrong, they had no idea what was going on. And so it was just this like unusable thing. So this is our effort to like rectify both of those. And I think the SDK team like really like nailed it, like it's really nice.
Yeah, this seems awesome. I remember in the past when I've worked with Auth0, I think it was before y'all even had the SPA SDK up. So we were just using like the JavaScript one and building Angular stuff on top of that. And it always seemed like there's nothing like really specific to our app here. It would be really nice if this was a thing. So now it is. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, totally.
Sweet, man. Well, yeah, we've got we talked about your book. We talked about the awesome new Auth0 stuff. Now I want to talk about you, Sam, if that's all right.
Cool, yeah.
So
we have someone in the comments, Crutchcorn, should say hi.
Yeah.
Hi, Crutchcorn. Also, Crutchcorn says they went to look up me and found Jam Sulene, which I don't think that's
not a real person. Is Jam out there?
Oh, Mike Ryan wants to know what kind of coffee I'm drinking. I feel I'm embarrassed because today I'm only drinking like Sam's Club or Costco coffee. I was drinking Kova coffee a couple days ago, but Kova is like pretty expensive, so I don't use it as my like daily driver. I know Mike is so upset with me. I know, but here's the thing:
is Mike a coffee snob? I didn't know this about him.
Well, Mike is a food snob in general. He's a foodie and a coffee. What do you call a coffee snob? I don't know. But I too am a coffee snob. It's just that like Costco sources all their coffee from Starbucks. So like you're getting Starbucks coffee for pretty cheap. So for like daily drinkers, I typically just go with that. And I'm a little ashamed because I am kind of a coffee snob.
Yeah.
But actually, now that we're back we just moved back into the city from the country, and so I have a lot more access now. So maybe I can return to my roots of being a coffee snob.
Good deal.
Of course, now I have a mortgage, so that might mean that having drinking expensive coffee isn't exactly high on the list.
You're conscientious, budget conscientious coffee snob now. I've been bad ever since like quarantine hit, and I've been separated from my office Keurig. And Jeff actually has an espresso in the office, so I've been real lazy. I just go for monsters for my caffeine now, which is probably bad.
So are you in Phoenix? Or,
I'm in Phoenix. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I will give a shout out though to there's a company in Oregon that we buy coffee from regularly called Silver Falls Coffee, and it is, for how cheap it is, it's really good. Like you can get it in grocery stores here. I'm sure it's not out past Oregon and Washington, but it's like $10 a pound, and it's like really good. I mean, so we should probably resume buying from them. But we've also got Brandon on the stream too, man. Mike and Brandon in one place, which means we should probably argue about barbecue, or like say inflammatory things about barbecue. Say the B word. So that have you watched the other B word? New, Chef's Table barbecue season?
No, I have
so not. Good. It's so good. And I really think it would trigger Brandon because it's a very diverse view of barbecue. So there's like an episode set in Mexico, an episode set in where else? There's like 2 in America and then 2 that aren't in America, and it's really, really good. Oh yeah, see, Mike's talking about grilling. Grilling is not barbecue.
There we go.
Oh boy, we're gonna go down. We should probably stop this now before we go down a barbecue rabbit hole.
I
think they're gonna be really upset by the rest of that season when they see people cooking in the ground and things like that.
Oh no,
well, it's a great show. Chef's Table has really like perfected their formula, and it's just a really fun show to watch.
Yeah. Sorry, Brandon. I think we triggered Brandon pretty hard here. But I wanted to, Sam, if you don't mind, talk about like your background, how you got into this business, how you got into everything. The barbecue keeps going.
Talking about barbecue, but only refer to everyone as not Brandon, and refer to Salt as
no.
Did you guys
the other B word?
The new NGRX sweatshirts? Did you see this? Oh my gosh, we need to put a link. Of the bread. Where was it?
I know it was on Twitter.
I think Mike and Brandon can drop a link. It's on Threadless. Oh, here it is. ngrx.threadless.com. I haven't bought mine because I can't decide which size I need. I'm always like in between sizes on hoodies. Like sometimes an extra large is like perfect, and sometimes I'm like swimming in it. Oh no, they're sold out. Are you serious? No, he's trolling me.
Is it?
It says add to cart.
He's just trying to get us to add it to our cart.
He's just trolling us. Oh my gosh. I was gonna say Threadless doesn't sell out.
Oh, here, let me share my screen over here.
Does anybody out there, do they have one? Do you know if the extra large is massive or if it's like just like a little bit bigger than a large? I'm always like, because I've got like so many tech hoodies at this point from conferences.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because like inevitably, if I request a large, it's either going to be small or it's going to be perfect. Or if I do an extra large, it's going to be perfect, or it's going to be like a Snuggie, basically, that's just like wrapped around me.
Yeah. No, so the thing that's like blowing my mind right now is I thought when they first posted this, it was just like an image of like cooking stuff. I didn't realize like the labels here is like the blender's effects, the oil selectors, the boilerplate is
amazing.
Appropriately.
It's absolutely amazing, and I just need to pull the trigger on which one. It's got a size chart, 45 to 47. It's a real pickle. Maybe Mike can privately DM me with what size he got, and I'll plan accordingly based on that. But yeah, those are cool. Anyway, we can talk about other things than And
That's all right.
with
think I
Mike and
made you
Brandon
fun.
being in the chat, now I'm like hanging out with my friends, so it's going to be hard to stay on topic.
What about me, Sam?
You're my friend too. I'm saying the collective group.
Hey, I got you to say it on air now. I've been validated.
There's always room for more people in the circle. There's always more room. Quiet, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So how did you what happened? What happened with you? How did you get into
how did I get here?
software? You did. I don't think you went to school for software, did you?
No, so I've had a long, strange journey into tech where when I was a kid, I really wanted to be a programmer. Like I'm talking like when I was like 8 years old, I started learning BASIC through library books. I had no idea. I mean, I say that I started learning it. I didn't really learn it. I like would get books. I was like 8 years old. And so I would get books from the library. I would try to like punch things into the Chipmunk basic IDE command line thing. I mean, I didn't do anything. I think I maybe was able to do like 2 + 2 = 4 or something. But that was like enough. Like I was really my uncles and grandfather would give me these hand-me-down Macs. And so I started tinkering with Macs when I was like a really young age and started wanting to like take them apart, and figure out like how do they work. And so that kind of sparked wanting to be a programmer. And then when I was in middle school, I had a cousin who was an engineer, and he like suggested that I start learning HTML. And so I started learning HTML.
That was a wise man right there.
Yeah. Also books from the library, and then like a lot of view source and copy and pasting. I was like 12, I think 11 or 12. Actually, fun fact, in moving, I found this journal that I had when I was a kid.
I saw you tweeted something
and like I was like 12 years old, and I put in there like my first web page is up. And it was like the IP address of the first web page I ever made. And it was, 22 years ago, which is horrifying.
It's not still up, is it?
No, unfortunately it's not. And you definitely do not want to do an archive.org search for that IP address. It is not pretty. So don't find that tweet and go to that, go down that rabbit hole. It's bad. So yeah, it was my cousin, I guess, at his work, just like threw up a server and let me put stuff up there. And but yeah, so that's when I started learning, and I really wanted to do that. Like I wanted to learn to code and everything. At the time though, there was no, there was no YouTube, there was no Treehouse, there was no Codecademy, none of that stuff. So the only thing I knew was that I should get a computer science degree. That's the only, so when I went to, I learned some HTML and CSS in high school. And then when I went to college, I started in computer science. But what nobody told me was that the first like 2 years of computer science is just math. It's like, there's nothing, you don't actually like touch a computer in your first like 2 years. So you
didn't touch a computer in your first 2 years? That's crazy.
Well, I didn't make it 2 years. I was sitting in Calc 2 my freshman year. Calc 2 and Physics 1, and I was registering for my sophomore year differential equations in Physics 2, and I was like, I don't care about it. Like I was like really struggling to like keep up with all the math and science, which like now is kind of embarrassing, but like I just like I regret dropping from computer science, but like I just didn't, all I wanted to do was code. It felt really unnecessary, like why do I need ectoplasm?
That's Caitlin from Norwalk.
I thought so. Yeah, that's what I figured. I figured that was her. I recognized the hair. But yeah, like I was just like, I don't want to learn differential equations. Like I had done calc 1 in high school. And I thought like that was all I needed. I just wanted to learn to code. And so I switched over to a bunch of different liberal arts things. I eventually landed in the religion department because it was like this hybrid between history and sociology and philosophy. And
This
so,
is super surprising, Sam. I don't know if
yeah.
you know this, but I have a theology degree.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Are you about to go down the same path?
Well, so for me, mine was more of an academic, like it was academia. It wasn't like theology. It was, I mean, I happened to be like religious at the time back then, but that wasn't my motivation. It was academic. Like I was going to be a professor. I was going to get my PhD. I wanted to go to like Oxford and get a PhD and like social change and religion and stuff like that. And like,
I was very much in the same boat. My dad's actually a philosophy professor at Yale. So,
oh wow, yeah. So that was my dream. Like that was what I was gonna do. And so like I did a bunch of academic stuff in college. I did like a scholarship program where I like spent a summer at Notre Dame doing like research on my thesis. And so I was going down that path. And then when I was like writing my senior thesis, I realized that like my view of what academia was like really different than what it actually is, which is like research. And like that the teaching, if you're at a research school, teaching is like not your priority, you know, like you're not like, what was attractive to me about academia was teaching. And and so I was like writing this 50-page paper on this bishop in North Africa. Actually, you're a theology person, so you probably know. Have you heard of Cyprian of Carthage?
Yes.
There we go. Nerd alert.
I'd be hard pressed to give you more than that, but the name is definitely recognizable.
Well, it's surprisingly relevant now because my paper was on the response to a plague in the Roman Empire in the 4th century, and so it's actually surprisingly relevant nowadays. But it was all about So my degree was in religion and academia and all that stuff. But then my advisor was like, this is great because like this is basically what you're going to be doing like all the time for the next like 2 decades of your life. And I was like, this is what I'm going to be doing. like I'm gonna be, like researching and writing papers forever. Like that sounds horrible. like, you know, like it was, I mean, it was fun. I enjoyed the research process. I think it's contributed a lot to my life to learn that skill, but like, that's not what I wanted. Like I wanted to be like helping people and like educating people and, you know, making a difference in their life. I didn't want to just like sit in an ivory tower and like surrounded by old books like for the rest of my life, you know, like,
surrounded by old books, and your life's contribution will be that you've added a few books to that collection.
Yeah, it just was weird. I didn't. Yeah, so that kind of like fizzled out, and so I graduated, and I you know, obviously I needed like some way to like live, make a living. I was actually married at the time. I got married really, really young, which was not the best decision. And so I had like someone to support who was a year behind me in school. And so I was starting to learn about like personal finance because I had gotten married and like needed to grow up. And so I got this idea that I wanted to be a financial advisor. And so I started like learning all the things and like going down the path of like financial planning and
personal finance is something I'm actually semi-passionate about, but it's weird because you can't talk about it in certain social contexts. So it's like, I don't know, it's one of those things that you like bring up when you know someone really well.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really emotional subject, and it's like a really like there's a lot of complexity around finance in America. So, but like so what I ended up doing was one of the ways that you can start a career in finance is to start doing commission work, like sales basically, because like you can't just like start out as like a 22-year-old kid like managing millions of dollars or like doing anything like, you know, like so that I got a job at an insurance company, and my goal like in doing it was like I want to help the average person with their money, you know, like I want to help the average family like manage their money and like make a plan and all that stuff, and like that was my goal. And so I started by doing like insurance, like life insurance, and then gradually got into like some of the investments, and I did that for several years. And Brandon, so you judge people's spending habits. Actually, so I did when I was in my 20s, when I was like a naive dummy who hadn't lived it all. I was pretty judgmental, but that job actually, I grew up a lot, and now I'm my finances are a lot more complicated than they used to be. So so I did that, and then I did that for several years, building up a clientele. I did that for like 3.5 years. Insurance, investments.
Maybe an odd question, Sam, but do you feel like you got any skills from those years that are applicable now? And maybe this goes back to your time in school too, because you mentioned like being able to research things. That was a big benefit. I'm curious if there's any other benefits from that.
Well, I think so from the college standpoint, the big thing there was like I got really practiced at taking complicated subjects and distilling them into papers, you know, like telling other people, like, you know, professors and stuff. Basically, like I learned how to research. I learned how to take a really, really complicated subject, you know, some obscure topic. Like I remember I wrote a paper about like the parallels between this one Indian goddess of destruction and this Greek god, because there's actually like Indian and Greek mythology actually intersect if you go back far enough. It's like a whole crazy thing about because they're geographically close to each other. They if you go back far enough, there's a bunch of overlap in like Sanskrit, ancient Sanskrit and ancient Greek and stuff like that. So I wrote this whole thing about that. Yep. Shiva also goes by Kali.
I was thinking Kali, but Shiva, I think is what it's called.
I think Kali is an incarnation of Shiva, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, cool.
And anybody can forgive me if I'm wrong about that. But
that's
so I wrote
this whole paper. Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. Getting into like, going off in these esoteric, complex topics and then writing papers about them was like a really good intellectual exercise. So now when I'm like, if I have to do that with like NGRX or RxJS or something like that, like
that's not that bad anymore.
I feel like I've got a skill set of being able to like figure out what the most important parts are to explain and like break them down into like understandable nuggets and things like that. And then the finance side, the biggest thing there was actually the sales skills, like having to get over, like I'm a really introverted person and I had to learn how to talk to total strangers and try to get them to give me money. And that was like absolutely horrifying. And like I learned how to like network and meet people and get involved in the community, like my local community, and build business relationships and like build a clientele and all that stuff. And like those, like I basically had to get over a bunch of my fears because I had to do like cold calling, you know, and I had to like ask for referrals, and it was like a whole thing, you know, like so.
It's super interesting that you describe yourself as being very introverted, Sam, because I found you like extremely personable. I don't know what it is.
I mean, I think so there's a difference between like shyness and introversion. I would say in my early 20s, I was both very shy and very introverted. And then the insurance sales job basically like forced me to get out of my like bubble and become like less shy. And so like I was able to get over that. I mean, I'm sort of like I'm sort of like an introvert who's really good at faking being extroverted, you know, like,
Well, yeah, it's
I,
interesting you get into that because like the name literally means like when do you get energized? Like we're kind of built like these
right,
batteries. Some things energize us, some things charge us, and we spend it on other things. And we
right.
just as a I don't know where we're at as a society, we always use it to describe shyness versus like being I don't know being boisterous or something. So
Right, exactly. Like, but yeah, I get energy from being alone. No offense to anybody. But like if I like when I do a conference, I'm like totally exhausted, you know. So I have to go back, I have to schedule time to like go back to the hotel room and just like be quiet and have nobody around and like recharge and everything. You know, like, so I have a certain, I always say to Amy that like I have a certain number of extrovert points for the day, basically. Like, and
Brandon's a Twitter
extrovert. Brandon expresses himself through his amazing GIF game as his like Twitter extroversion. So, but yeah. So I mean, I've basically learned how to push myself to not be shy, and like but the energy thing is still there, you know, like I can only handle so much social interaction before I have to go hide under a rock for a little while and like charge my batteries again.
I feel you. I think I'm actually introverted in that sense too, in that I charge by being by myself and then I expend by being with other people. But I think I actually enjoy being with other people and having conversations more than being alone. So it's a weird dichotomy there.
I really like small groups of people, like close friends. Like there's sort of a threshold of like how much, like if I have to, because it's I'm not great at like small talk. I'm not great at like I've had to like, those are skills I've had to develop over the years. You know, it's not like a comfortable thing. You probably wouldn't guess that just because at this point I have so much practice and I've like spent a decade working on it. So like, but I'm definitely one of those people who like 10 years ago, I was one of those people who would have said like small talk is stupid. I'm never gonna like, I just want to like talk about real things because I'm like edgy and in my 20s. But like, you know, you don't understand like the social game at that point and like how you have to like build trust with people and like kind of like lead.
There's an economy there.
Yeah, there's an invisible game that's being played when you're like getting to know someone and like building a rapport with them and that kind of thing. And that's what I learned through that job.
Yeah, and those are like prerequisites to getting to edgy Sam's like real stuff.
Right. So, right. Exactly. Yeah, you don't just like Kramer your way into the room and talk about like your deepest thoughts. You know, you don't just like break into a room and like, hey, let me tell you my thoughts on personal finance, or like like let me tell you about this crazy time that I had. You know, like nobody wants that. You know, like I don't just like break into a room and tell people. So it's the same kind of thing. Like you know, like you don't just shove your nose in someone's face and say like, buy my book, you know, like it's just like, you got to like become friends with them and like get to know them.
So what you bring up, I've always thought was like exactly what happens like in a lot of times in open source. And I don't know how to get around it, but like, it feels like if you want to contribute to open source, you inevitably have to like Kramer your way into a repository, be like, here's a pull request. Don't know if you want it or not. And then you get into like you get to immediately like showing your code, which can be like a very like for lack of a better word, a very intimate thing, like being exposed in that way. And yeah, it's just odd. It's just odd.
Yeah, I think it's helpful for people to ease their way in to like an open source project, just because it's not just for their benefit, it's also for your benefit, so that you don't spend some huge amount of time working on this PR before you even know somebody. Like they don't have a level of like trust for you yet to know why they should care about your PR. You know what I mean? So like if you spend some time maybe making some little contributions to the docs, fixing a couple bugs, like, getting involved on whatever Discord or Slack or Gitter or whatever other thing, like getting to know the community, building helpful projects or things like you sort of build that trust so that then if you submit some huge PR that you spent 25 hours on or whatever, like people will look at it and they'll be like, oh, well, Zach like has contributed all these other things. So that maybe that makes more sense to work on, That's my opinion.
Makes sense. Right. Makes sense. But somehow we got onto this topic. But we were talking about things you learned from being in personal finance and how you can take it into like our software world. I'm curious. Yeah. We kind of talked a little bit before we went live about like systematizing stuff, and I'm curious if that started for you with sales. I imagine it would have to. I think you were kind of describing that a little bit when you're talking about contacts.
Yeah, it definitely did. And one, I'm going to throw a link in here because one of the things, so I wrote this article a few years ago called the Painfully Shy Developer's Guide to Networking for a Better Job Without Being Creepy. And that was basically like distilling everything I learned about like building relationships and that kind of thing, but applying it to tech. But yeah, like the systematizing thing definitely is, because like when you do a sales job, you have to break up, you have to like, you have to develop this idea, this understanding of what activities actually generate revenue and what don't, and then plan your time accordingly. And so the way my like manager described it was red, yellow, and green time. So like green time is like revenue producing time. So that's like talking to clients on the phone, meeting with them, like anytime you're interacting with a client, basically, whether it's a new client or a prospective client or whatever, but like actually interacting with people. And then yellow time is like maintenance. So like building financial plans for people, organizing your contact system, like all that kind of thing. And then red time is like, Twitter, not necessarily Twitter, but like, like social media, like unproductive time. That doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It just means like you have to plan accordingly. So like, so the idea was you're supposed to have like, I think it was like 60% of your time or something like that be green time in front of clients or trying to find new clients. And then like 30% be yellow, like maintenance time, and then 10% be like, goof off time. And so that sort of started that process where I like started systematizing. There's also this weird magic formula in almost any type of sales. It's really strange, where it takes about 10 for every 10 people that you talk to, one of them ends up buying something. And it's like, it's honestly like it's a really weird formula that you see in almost all kinds of categories. Like if you talk to, like, have a real conversation with like 10 people about something, like one of them will end up agreeing with like doing what you want. Like, and like the numbers almost always work out. Like sometimes it might be 2 or 3, and then the next week it would be 0. Right. And then but it almost always worked out. So this insurance company had backed out this formula to where if you call X number of people and set X number of appointments, then like X number of, like, you're supposed to make X number of sales. And the idea was that you set 2 appointments every single day for some time in the future. And that would, if you mathed that out, it would lead to 1 to 2 sales a week. And like, so that was the formula. And so because of that, like I learned about like systematizing, I learned about consistency, because like basically your goal every single day, like the only thing you needed to think about was making those 2 appointments, because everything else just followed naturally after that. So because basically it was 2 appointments a day equates to 10 appointments a week. And so out of those 10 appointments, you'll get 1 to 2 sales, like 1 to 2 insurance policies or one or two investment accounts.
And this is irregardless of who the person making the sales pitch is. Is that right?
Yeah, it's pretty much, it evens out. Like in the beginning, your numbers are going to skew one way or the other. Like if you're like really terrible at it, then, maybe you'll have some bad, but the issue there is that you're not qualifying your appointments good enough. You know what I mean? Like there's a big difference in like who you talk to. And so like, this is, I know this is like seems like so far out of bounds, but this actually affects how I apply to conferences. Yeah. Like this is like the same principle that goes into applying to conferences, where like if you like the number it almost works out. It's really weird. Like in the beginning where like you for every 10 CFPs you write, you end up getting accepted to like 1 or 2, like if you average it out. And in the beginning, that number may be way off because you're not good at writing CFPs yet. You've got to like keep refining the system, but like eventually you start to build a system, you get good at writing them, you get good at submitting them, you understand what people want, you're better at qualifying. Like I'm not going to apply to like Ruby conference because I haven't written Ruby in like 8 years. So I start narrowing down the focus of like what I want to apply to. And so that system like continues to pay dividends for me, just like learning that skill set.
Yeah, that's crazy. I would have assumed for sure, like the goal of being a salesperson is taking that number you just described, like the 10%, and trying to get it higher. But it's interesting to hear that it's actually more about getting just the right number of leads.
It's the only way that number ever gets higher is for repeat customers. Like so let's say you did an insurance policy for someone and now they're ready to open a savings account for their kids, or like a college education fund, if what in America is a 529 plan. Like your percentage there is like way higher, but even so, it was just the most bizarre thing because like somehow it would always like shake out. Like I would have like there would be times where it was like, oh man, I like wrote 4 policies this week, and then like 2 of them would fall through in the underwriting process, and it was like, what the, like, how is that possible? Like the ones that actually ended up making it to the finish line were almost always 10%, and it was just like, it was just so weird. And it did the same thing with like investments and everything. It was just like so strange.
Neat. Well, we discovered a fundamental law of the universe.
It's something about that. Yeah. There's equivalents of that on the internet too. Like conversion rate between like email and sales is like almost always 0.5%. It's like almost never more than 1%. If it's more than 1%, like something is wrong with your processes. Like you have too many like cousins on there that are just like eventually going to die off, like, or not die off like physically. I just mean like, like it might be skewed in the beginning and then it'll just like even out, and it'll always be between 0.5% and 1%. It's just weird. It's like statistics, the law of large numbers, Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think too, it's like you described the return customers, that's where you really see the return on investment, I guess, of your time in this scenario. Yeah. But I think that's like super true online. Like if people know you, like it's so much easier to I don't know, get people to watch your stream or buy what you're selling. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard like to like talk about these things because it sounds so like
it does.
It sounds so like dehumanizing or like robotic. It's not really about that. I mean, like you can become like the used car salesman kind of person, but like it really isn't. Like it's all based around like having like relationships with people and being friends. Like you're trying to help people in the end. Like you're not trying to like sell them, snake oil or whatever, and trying to sell those sweatshirts, Brandon. Sell those hoodies.
The way I see it is like I'm trying, like, as developers, I think we all have like this weird eye on efficiency, right? Like we're trying to become more efficient. We're building tools to make other people more efficient. I'm wanting to, like, with my time, I'm trying to like be efficient in reaching out to people and helping them with, you know, whatever it is they want help with their dev work or just relating. So if I can hit more people with a stream, that's how I feel I get more efficient. I don't know.
Right.
That's my justification to myself. I don't feel like I'm really selling anything at least. So I want to at some point, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Like for me, like when I did that NG upgrade course, that was like where all of those lessons kind of came together because
right. So the NG upgrade course, this is a course you did on taking AngularJS projects and moving them up to Angular, which is a huge business, right?
Yeah, it's massive. And I'm actually in the process of migrating. I'm like, the course is still like people still buy the course, like it's still an issue, and so I'm migrating it over to Podia, which is where I have the book hosted. And so I'm going through this huge effort to migrate it over to Podia, rebuild the landing page, like do all that because it's still a viable product. And like I definitely learned like through that the whole thing of like that getting better at the business side and the sales side actually does help more people because like I've had people come up to me, like I did a conference in Las Vegas last year and somebody from Norway came up to me and was like, you were there too.
I thought you were going to talk about me coming up to you for a second because I did come up to you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that too. We did. That was a different conference in Vegas, but
okay.
I did 2 different ones in Vegas last year. But cool. Like, I did this one in Vegas. It was one of the Angular Mix ones, and this guy from Norway came up to me and was like, "I just want to thank you for the upgrade course because like my work bought it for me, and that's how I was able to like do my job." And like that was cool. And like so it's like it's actually helping more people to get better at like being able to write good sales copy and like build logistics and systems for businesses and things like that. Like that stuff does end up helping people because you could have the best, most helpful course or book in the entire universe, but if nobody knows it exists, then your impact has been zero. And I actually talk about that in the DevRel book too, because like that's one thing you have to do in DevRel is like measure your impact and figure out like how am I like what results am I getting from like speaking or writing or streaming or whatever else, Well,
I feel it's super hard for conferences because I don't think you see like speaking at a conference, you don't see much measurable impact from any given conference. I think it's like the benefit of the connections you make at that conference, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely like a compounding like net effect over time, and you're like building goodwill and you're making friends and you're like like those things all build on each other. That's actually been a big thing with all the virtual events is like you don't really get any of those upsides. Like most of the upsides of conferences are the relationships that you're building, like I feel like I know you a lot better, even though like I've only met you in person like once or twice. Like I've seen you in person and I've like spent some time with you, like
one thing for me is in person, you get to figure out how tall people are. It's very hard to determine that without it.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
And you get free snacks like Brandon says.
Yeah, I miss the snacks. The snacks were good. Man, I did a couple conferences in India at the beginning of this year, and it was the best thing ever. Like the food at those conferences was just like I was in heaven. It was just like
So I was at a conference, I think it was at the start of this year too, here in Phoenix. But so I've been to RxJS Live. That was my first conference ever, actually.
Oh, cool.
And then we had one here. I think it was called what was it? Hack AZ. I've got a sticker for.
Uh-oh. I think we lost Zach. Well, now's the time where all right, I'm taking over the Zach show. I don't have the problem is that I don't have any of the like admin powers to like bring anybody's comments on. So I'm just gonna have to like oh yeah, Jam Sulene. I gotta like if I like take off my glasses and like I don't have like a hat anywhere. That would be like my alter ego, right? I don't have anything. I'm in a new house, so I don't have any oh, StreamYard in fact just kicked him out. What if his internet is just for the day and I'm just like, I know I could just like be here. You're just gonna have to like watch me with lunch. Yeah. This is when I need like a stand-up routine to fall back on. Let's see. What should we talk about? Should we talk about barbecue again? Here's a question. Advice for building networks and social confidence while in quarantine. Oh man, Caitlin, that's a good one. Oh, I was just taking over your show. No problem.
It's okay. Whenever I'm gone, it is the guest's responsibility. I guess. I'm so sorry about that.
Ah, no worries. It was just really funny because I was like, was that my internet or his internet?
No, I saw things freezing up when I started talking about the Half Stack conference, and then it was like I was screaming at my computer. I don't know if y'all heard that part.
No, we didn't hear that. That's funny.
Okay, that's good. Do you want to answer?
Yeah, sure. Caitlin asks advice for building networks and social confidence while quarantining. Yeah, don't touch any more stickers. That is a tough one, Caitlin. Like, I feel like what you can do right now is just like build relationships electronically that you hope will pay off in person when you get to meet them in person. Like, because it is really hard when you don't know somebody in person. Like, there's just something really different about it. Like, even if it's just the fact that you got to like have lunch with them at a conference or have a drink after a conference or something like that, it really changes. So I've had to really think this through myself because there's so many virtual events. And so what I'm trying to do is just like get to know people as best I can through places like Discord, since Discord's like really informal. That's like kind of the closest simulation. And then, and maybe do like occasional, meet up, like video kind of chat things or play games with people or things like that, just to like, because that you get to know people most through the non-work things, and I'm just hoping that when we're able to, if we're able to travel again, that like, then I'll be able to like kind of build on those relationships. Yeah. I think you have to, I guess, that all you can really do at this point is try to be nice and helpful electronically somehow, like boosting some, if somebody's working on something, you can like tweet about it. If somebody needs help with something, you can connect them to somebody who knows about it. Just trying to like be helpful to people and like provide opportunities for people that they can't find themselves. That's sort of my general philosophy, is like, if I have some resource, like knowledge about something or a network or something, I just try to pass that along to other people, and like, use whatever resources I can to help boost other people and make more opportunities for them. Yeah. So I think that's like kind of all we can do at this stage.
Yeah. I usually take like a really hard science approach to this, Sam, where like if you just look at the history of humanity, where we've like evolved, where community is like super important to us, and being able to develop relationships, super important in order for like the tribe to survive and for all these things to happen. And evolution is this really long, slow process. And in the last couple hundred years, we're like, oh, by the way, here's phones and tweets and text messages, and here's a video camera. Now you can talk to anyone all over the world, and we just don't interface the same. So it's tough. But yeah, to your points, like just just providing some sort of value there, or like trying to hack our evolution to be like, we don't need actual face-to-face contact.
Yeah.
Trying to do that when you don't have to is probably a bad idea. But while we're in the situation here where we don't have any other option. I think it's the only way to go.
Yeah, it's tough. I think people in DevRel, like, yeah, definitely digital overstimulation. Like, I think when quarantine first started, there was a big push in DevRel of like, well, we'll just take everything online. It'll be the same. It'll be like way cheaper. So everybody loved, like all the budget people were super happy because they don't have to pay for travel anymore. And it's like, well, this is great. You're going to get all the same results just by not having to travel. And it definitely 100% has not worked out that way. Like,
yeah,
digital, like virtual events are now commoditized. It's really hard to get like people to care about virtual conferences right now.
Yeah.
And like, the key is really an engagement right now, like having conversations with people, doing small meetups online with like 30 or fewer people, and where you can actually chat and ask questions and all that stuff. Cause like some of the bigger virtual conferences have been really well run. But I've done some where like nobody's watched the talk, like, and they might have had like 1,000 registrations and the views on YouTube are like 50 or something, like, and I put the same amount of time into that as I would have for an in-person event. But like, there's just such a fatigue now of like, there's content fatigue, like,
I think Kim described it as like a glut when I was talking to her. Like there's so much content right now, and everyone's just at their screens at home staring at their computers. They don't want to do more. Yeah. And there's a lot of people like me who are like, I'm stuck at home. Let's start streaming on Twitter. and there's just so much content like that out everywhere. So, yeah. And take a quick aside to say hey to Ellie, Lucas. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah. Hey, nice to see you.
So, yeah, we're coming towards the end of our time here, Sam. I don't know if you have a hard stop or not, but
it's just lunch. That's my hard stop. Yeah.
There you go. Well, any last points you want to get out before we call it quits?
Just to be an equal opportunity barbecue connoisseur. That's my only
one last jab.
My last thing,
nice. So on some of the days we don't where we actually live code, we've been working on an RPG game similar to Pokemon. I've been trying to do some stuff. Oh no. what have you done, Sam? I've been trying to do it so guests from now on, I can make a character for them in game. But one of the things I'll ask my guests is, what type do you want to be? So types are based on Pokemon. Let me give you a full list here.
Okay.
Let me see.
I love RPG.
You do?
Yeah.
Nice.
Especially like turn-based RPGs and like JRPGs. Those are my jam.
Oh man, you're
into Fire Emblem 3 Houses at the beginning of the quarantine.
Yes. Did you play it again? 3 Houses was like so involved. I played through it once, but you're like, it's designed so you can play it like the 3 times through.
Yeah,
feels like so.
Yeah, so I started my second one. I love that game. It's like exactly what I want in a game. It's a lot more like anime than I thought it was going to be. Like, I'm not really an anime person, but like the gameplay is so much fun, the battle system and everything.
Mm-hmm. I remember when I was in high school, excuse me, the first Game Boy Advance one came out. And I was just like, yes, this is what I want. I felt so smart playing it too. I don't know what it was, but all right, I'm going to list out the types here for you real quick, and you can choose 1 or you can choose 2 if you want.
Okay.
There's fire, there's water, there's electric, grass, earth, holy, dark, arcane, toxic, air, and normal. So,
yeah. I think I would probably do like earth and fire.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Have you ever played Pokemon?
I was never like a huge like Pokemon person. I sort of like I feel like the first Pokemon came out when I was like 13 or 14. And so I was like at that stage where I was like, this is a kid's game. and so like I kind of like missed the boat on it. And then like as I've gotten older, I've been like, oh man, that actually looks really fun, but I'm like so far gone at this point that I just don't like, I haven't looked at it.
Yeah. I remember when I was really young, being really into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and my dad tricked me. He was like, only little kids play with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And so I ended up giving away all my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle toys. And then not that much longer later, I was like, I really want those back.
Oh my God. I actually have a similar story, because like my dad was really big on, like, I grew up in an Air Force family, and so we moved around a lot. So my dad was really big on us like purging our possessions, because he didn't like to like move them around.
Yeah.
And so when I was like, I think it was like, 10, 11 or 12 or 13 or something, in that age of starting to feel like you're like too grown up or whatever, he had me go through all my stuff. And so I was like, I don't need to play with like these toys anymore. Like, I don't care about this stuff. And I gave away all of my Ninja Turtles, all of my like Batman, like all of that stuff. I just gave it all away. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, this stuff would be like so in vogue right now. If I had like original Ninja Turtle action figures from like the 90s, the 80s and 90s and stuff like that, like, what are you going to do? I kept all of my baseball cards, and it turns out that like the 90s are the least valuable baseball cards you can own.
They're
like,
not
so
worth
I gave away all the valuable stuff, and I
Yeah.
kept these boxes of 90s baseball cards that are apparently like worthless, because apparently like the 90s, like all kids were into baseball cards or something, and so they just mass produced them, and so like they're like absolutely worthless.
Yeah, I think it's like right around the 90s was when like the baseball cards from like the 60s started selling for a lot. So everyone was like, gotta remember to hang on to these.
Exactly. That's because production was different back then, and you had like really, famous players and all that. Like it was just a different time.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think it's too, and this is for a lot of stuff like stocks and all this. You gotta see what everyone's doing, and you gotta like kind of do the opposite in a smart way somehow. So I don't know. I haven't looked at yet.
Warren Buffett said, "When everybody's greedy, be fearful, and when everybody's fearful, be greedy."
Yeah. Very wise words.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Sam. Sorry, what was that?
I just said this was fun.
Yeah, man. I'm so glad you came on. I feel like we got a good, decent way into your story, but it feels like there's still more to tell. So I don't know. Maybe we could have you on some other time later.
Yeah,
but
always happy to come back on. And I guess we didn't even get to the stuff about like becoming a developer and all that. We just like stopped at my 20s and moved on. But,
that's okay. We'll close the circle some other time.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much for coming on, and to everyone out there. Hope y'all enjoyed. Hope y'all have a great weekend.
Yeah. Thanks everybody.
Yeah. Catch y'all later. I'll play the outro now. Here we go. There.